Before I get started in this very much well-deserved triple P, and this is probably going to be one of the best triple Ps that I do all year, and what a way to bring the year to a close, unless something else of course happens in the next 16 days. But before I get started, let me give a shout out to Black Voltron Reloaded, a huge supporter of the channel, follower on Twitter, and all that good stuff. Sent me this article that went kind of unnoticed, sort of like how this website is about to go very unnoticed in the very near future. They sent me this article from something called the pivotfund.org. Apparently it's some kind of website that I guess where people can support various websites and blogs that are ran by non-PC people. But I highly doubt that all the donations in the world could help save this sinking ship known as the root, or as Professor Black Truth calls it, the weed, or the rot, I should say. And I wonder if he's gotten wind of this. And if not, I hope he does, and soon. Because this was posted on December 8th, 2021, and here we are 8 days later, because I'm recording it on the 16th, where you have the root that is basically on its way out. They got a nice lengthy write-up about them, and I'm going to read every last word and salivate on every hanging word. Let's get into it. And this post was made by a woman by the name of Aja Hannah. The Root, a digital website that boasts that it provides news with a black perspective for black people. If you say so. Look at who owns it, or at this point, who owned it. Has lost more than 2/3 of its writers, journalists, popular and noted columnists, and content producers and analysis of the masthead shows. More than 2/3. That is more than half of its staff. Let's continue. In April, the site's former celebrated editor-in-chief Danielle Belton left to take a position at the Huffington Post. Last month, the site's prolific heavy hitters Michael Harriot and Stephen Crockett said their goodbyes after 10 years of 5 and more than 10 years respectively. And now, sources say the Very Smart Brothers column, co-founded by Damon Young, and y'all know I got a problem with him ever since he wrote that BS article about black men being the white men of the community. I will never forget that one. And Panama Jackson will disappear from the Root, and soon the Root will disappear with them. The staff shakeup comes just 7 months after Vanessa K. DeLuca was appointed to the top position, and the site shifted away from political news and cultural criticism to focus more on celebrity news and entertainment. The staff moves and changes in editorial direction raise questions about the site's future, its longevity, and whether it can maintain the loyalty of its hard-won audience. You want to know, I think a lot of it also had to do with the stuff that, you know, the voices of the new black media has said about them and the stuff that we have brought to the table. And see, they said it right there. They moved away from talking about cultural stuff and political stuff to talking about entertainment and celebrity gossip. And now it's fading into obscurity. Because the thing is, no one went to the Root for that. Hell, to be honest, you shouldn't have gone to the Root for anything. The Root to me was like the Wikipedia of so-called black news. Let's continue. In many ways, the Root is experiencing the same market pressures and staff instability that all media outlets are experiencing, said Charles Whitaker, the dean of the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University, who closely follows black media and trends in the ethnic press. They are attempting to find new business models, Whitaker said. You've got to do something different and outstanding to make yourself a destination, and it's hard for black media to make themselves a destination for a large number of readers. Not over here. Because see, we don't have to do all of this stuff that the root, or as some say, the rot or the weed ever had to do. All we had to do was give our hardcore perspective on things and not sugarcoat, and then not have to tiptoe into quote unquote celebrity gossip when we were losing people thinking that was going to bring them back. Notice a lot of people who run sites like these tend to do that a lot. They'll, because or publications, because didn't Ebony, even though that's kind of entertainment based, and some other black publications that didn't do like this focus on the news and they go straight entertainment, like look at BET. BET used to have a news part of their network, but now all of it is pretty much straight up entertainment, even though it is in the name. This is Black Entertainment Television, so that's par for the course. But at least there was some good programming that they did have back like in the 90s and early 2000s, Teen Summit being one of them. And they used to have BET Nightly News and everything. I remember they tried to do the news again with TJ Holmes, but that didn't last very long. And now he's over at, was it ABC, I think, with Good Morning America. So yeah, but I guess they figure people would rather be entertained than informed. And then if you look at some of the stuff that they wrote on the quote unquote political or news side, it felt real biased. Like these were like, let's put it this way. The Root is a very left leaning publication. If they could find any good write-up they could to do about Kamala the Chameleon or Mr. Touchy Feely Creepy Jim Crow Joe, they would. I'll leave it at that. For a time, The Root had been a destination site. DeLuca declined to be interviewed for the story and released a written statement instead. Jim Spanfeller, the CEO of Geo Media, which now owns The Root, did not respond to emails or phone calls for this story. In interviews, former and current staff blamed changes in ownership not only for the exodus of high-profile personnel, but for the publication's shift in focus on entertainment at the expense of culturally competent public service journalism and insightful commentary that helped popularize the site. Crockett, who had been at The Root since it started in 2008, wrote a goodbye letter, but never actually addressed why he decided to resign. He did, however, offer a hint in a November 23rd tweet. "I will be leading a Twitter thread entitled How to Murder a Black Website. This is a working title. The first one was called It Be Your Own People." So it sounds to me like there was a lot of infighting going on over there at The Weed, The Root, The Right. How it started, because this article that I'm reading is broken up into subheadings. It says, initially launched as a vertical by the Washington Post in 2008, its white owners at the Post gave The Root plenty of autonomy and trusted its stewardship to revered professor and historian Henry Louis Gates Jr. and top-notch editor Lynette Clementson, who came to The Root as its founding managing editor from the New York Times. The Root flourished at the Post under this leadership and became a go-to site for Black thought leadership on critical topics of the day, such as the housing crisis to policing in America and more. When Jeff Bezos purchased the newspaper from the Graham family, corporate interests turned to position the Post into a national political government accountability site, and The Root was sold off in 2015 to the Spanish language media company Univision. Now you got to say to yourself, how in the world did you go start off as a little piece in the Washington Post to being sold off to a Spanish network? Univision. And I remember when they made that sell. I said, that's very interesting, that because, Univision, that's mainly stuff that's catered to people, a Spanish speaking culture, and they put The Root over there. Like what benefit were the people of that culture going to get from this is what I'm trying to figure out. But then again, what were Black people of sound mind going to get from The Root is a better question. At Univision, The Root continued to gain traction, expanding in audience and size and attracting major advertising dollars as its new owners packaged the site with others such as Jezebel, Fusion, and Deadspin, reaching highly coveted younger audiences. The The Root has had many iterations since it was started in 2008 for the Obama era end, and for a long time remained true to its original ambition to be a highbrow political alternative to then mainstream black magazines, with then editor Donna Bird successfully realizing Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s starting vision. Over time, however, a lack of attention and investment meant it faced a declining and aging audience, one that was primarily concentrated on the East Coast, said Raju Narisetti, who acquired The Root as then CEO of Gizmodo Media Group, which was a part of the Univision at the time. What changed in the relatively short time it was part of the Gizmodo Media Group was a very successful transition under Danielle Belton's stewardship, and with Univision's resources to becoming the digital home for a more politically, socially, and culturally demanding black audience that fell in love with The Root's, calling it, as writers see it, opinions, and its fully black prism to what America was going through as it moved toward the Trump era. In 2019, Geo Media purchased The Root and 12 other websites from Univision for $20.6 million. Michael Harriot, who penned some of The Root's most incisive and popular columns in their opinion, said the company's new owners wanted to streamline the site, replacing edgy commentary on race and culture with lighter, more trendy content. Belton, he said, fought many of those changes. So as you can see, they were see, this is what happens when you now fall into the hands of others. You can't control your narrative. They said they went from talking about harder, edgier commentary on race with on culture and race to now going with more trendy content, basically anything celebrity based, like you can read through the code speak. Danielle Belton shielded us from the nonsense, said Harriet, who now writes columns for The Guardian US. We just had to write what we wanted to write and what we thought mattered. She served as a wall against the higher ups. We were only concerned about completing our mission. Harriet, like several other staffers, described The Root in the past tense, calling it a place where black people could go to talk to each other in a language that we use, to say the things that we can't say in a lot of the mainstream publications. Some of the stuff they wrote in The Root, many of us would not talk about or mention or say. See, they only talking about a small faction. We're not, and we're outside of that faction, which is a good thing. And now they're outside of that faction because the doors are starting to close on this. The Root is not the first of Geo Media's publication to revolt and capsize due to clashes with corporate. In 2019, Deadspin became embroiled in a battle with Geo Media CEO Jim Spanfeller, a media executive who ran Forbes from 2001 to 2008. The staff at Deadspin were told in a memo to stick to sports in its reporting. The staff bucked at this edict from the new owners. According to New York Times, the site then editor-in-chief Barry Pachetsky refused to follow the memo and was fired. The rest of Deadspin staff then resigned in protest. Then Geo Media's editorial director Paul Maidment resigned as well. That same year, 2 former executives filed discrimination and negligence lawsuits against Geo Media and Spanfeller. This year has not been much better. Jezebel, the feminist blog formerly owned by Gawker, also saw about 75% of its staff leave this year. Geo Media's new editorial director Jim Rich also resigned due to internal clashes with higher ups. So it seems to me that the common denominator for all these sites, including The Root, is this Geo Media. That's their common denominator. But I wish I could say that I feel bad for them, but I'd rather not. So I'm gonna continue reading this and just kind of take it all in, just like I know y'all are right now. Rich was in hot water the week before his resignation for an article he co-wrote on Deadspin, which buried racist comments made by ESPN host Rachel Nichols. Rich denied that his resignation has anything to do with the article. Narisetti, the former CEO who now heads up global publishing at McKinsey & Company, said that significant investments were made to bring powerful voices to The Root. What many people also forget when talking about this period, which was 2017 to 2018, not only did it see all-time record audiences, but more than half its readers were white and Hispanic, making it a real voice of black journalism that actually reached diverse American audiences, thanks in part to being within a network of sites such as Jezebel, Gizmodo, and Jalopnik. It also became the home for powerful writers who lived across America, from Mississippi to Texas to Chicago and Los Angeles, he said. Whitaker, who once worked at Ebony as a senior editor, reminisced on the Root's vision. It was supposed to be more holistic and to provide a more penetrating look at African American culture, art, and news, but it too has become subject to the tyranny of the click. You don't necessarily get eyeballs with traditional news stories. You get it through celebrity gossip and conflict. That winds up driving editorial decisions. On its homepage, it can be seen that the content of The Root has strayed from news and black opinion to entertainment. Before April 2021, the featured stories were news, opinion, and race matters. Today, much of the headline content is fashion, music, entertainment, and television. Now, before I go any further, what I'm about to say, this isn't to back up The Root in any way, because this is actually something I've come to the conclusion of before what I'm learning about right now as far as The Root goes. It's still F the root, the rot, the weed. Whenever you have a lot of black publications who can't seem to thrive or make it on whatever they originally were talking about, such as like heavy issues like what The Root was doing, and they are made to they're either forced to change into the direction that they headed into, or they voluntarily decide to do that, that just means that you didn't know how to really deliver like that. But in their case, they probably did know how to deliver, but when they fell into these hands, this is what they were made to do, because they no longer were the true owners, of it. Honestly, it seems to me The Root was never really truly black owned, even in its essence. Sure, you had black people that was running it, but they ended up in the Washington Post, which we all know is not black owned. And then they got sent from Washington Post to Univision, which we know for sure isn't black owned. And then they ended up with this Geo Media, excuse me, which we know isn't black owned either. So The Root was never really true. They may have written for black people, quote unquote, but they were never truly black owned. And the same goes for a lot of these other publications that claim that they write for black voices or black thought or black culture. Utilizing the Wayback Machine, it can be seen that the navigation bar changed to include culture and entertainment on May 28, 2021. Very Smart Brothers was pushed to the end of the bar. At a later date, Beauty Style tab was also added. Days after Belton's departure, Damon Young, that clown, published a piece titled I'll Be Around, which was published by The Root on April 30th, yet within 7 months most of the staff would leave. First to step away were staff writer Joe Girardo and dedicated freelancer Zach Lindley. Then senior reporter Terrell J. Starr, known for covering U.S.-Russian foreign policy in the 2020 elections, and 3 video producers exited The Root. Finally, managing editor Janetta Adams and news editor Monique Judge were forced out in early November, followed by Harriet's and Crockett's exit 2 weeks later. Belton was replaced by DeLuca, an outsider, instead of Adams, a longtime staffer who had applied for The Root's top job. Second in command and day-to-day manager of operations, Adams had been at The Root since its inception. She is now working as an opinions editor at another black national heavy website on commentary and entertainment, thegrio.com, which is another place that is much like The Root. The Griot is owned by Byron Allen, one of the wealthiest black men in America. Yeah, but they still pump up the same type of stuff that The Root does. Like, I literally think of The Griot as The Root Jr. I've told my people, if you send me stories to talk about, don't send it from either one of those two sites. And the thing is, 9 times out of 10, a story that they might be covering on that site, it might be covered on another website that I would rather read from or refer to than these two. Like I said, The Root and The Griot are like Wikipedia. The Root staff members were surprised when DeLuca arrived as the new editor-in-chief. DeLuca is the former editor-in-chief of the once venerable Essence magazine, and we saw what happened with that. A pioneer publication targeting black women that has also experienced significant turnover and ownership changes in recent years. Before joining The Root, DeLuca had most recently occupied the top of the masthead at Zora, a site for women of color. That's their words, not mine. Launched on but then again, knowing how these people operate, it might truly really mean women of color and not black women. launched mastheaded Zora, I already read that part, launched a public publishing platform Medium. She took a buyout earlier this year after Medium decided to scale back on its journalism. Whenever there is a change of editorial leadership, there is always a transition period, DeLuca wrote in an email to the Pivot Fund. I enjoy full editorial independence, and I'm firmly committed to continuing the Root's mission of providing unflinching news commentary and analysis with our own unique point of view. I have had no pressure whatsoever from management to change from this mission or the voice of the Root. And if there was such pressure, I wouldn't stand for it. Head of corporate communications at GO Media, Mark Neshes, referred to DeLuca's statement when the Pivot requested an interview with the company's CEO. Though several former and current staffers were reluctant to speak on the record, they privately accused DeLuca of being little more than a mouthpiece for GO Media and its white CEO. One of the primary complaints staffers have is that despite the highest grossing website in the GO Media portfolio, personnel did not receive bonuses or raises. They also claim there is no upward mobility at the company. These issues, they said, were brought to DeLuca's attention, but nothing has changed. Staff fought back when she wouldn't. While DeLuca did not consent to an interview for this story, in October, matters came to a head when she wanted to profile a controversial black content creator. Staff pushed back and refused. Shortly after, DeLuca took to Twitter, "If y'all only knew how many people I have outlasted, you wouldn't try me. Hashtag resilience is a verb." She tweeted. Some of the staff took offense and saw this as a microaggression. A note: the difficulty in nailing down one single cause of the exodus comes from the reluctance of black staffers to publicly criticize the publication. Whitaker compared black media to a small family. No one wants to air the family's dirty laundry. There are enough other people out there who are willing to criticize and dismiss black institutions. When you've been a part of a venerable black institution, the last thing you want to do is going out the door is to tear that down. That's just a sense of solidarity, he said. In any case, now the consensus is that the Root is dead, or at least dying. Harriet's last words in his farewell letter, "Deuces," rings true with an ominous light. See, some things sometimes just end like this. And that is the entire article. What else do you want me to say to that? I mean, it's been a long time coming. Took too long, if you ask me. But one thing that they won't mention, and I truly believe that this helped in it. I mean, I didn't know all the infighting stuff because I really didn't care. Still don't. But I would like to believe that the voices of the new black media, or just the new black media, probably helped to usher them out the door. And it's not because we, forced them out. It's because we just hit different. We just have we have a vibe to us that just attracts people, and we don't have to do all the extra stuff like they did, or like the Griot did, which I have a feeling they'll be, well, I don't know. They could be on their way out too. You never know. But then again, they had Byron Allen on their side, so who knows? But this thing, the Root was passed around more times than a lady of the night. I mean, it started in one place, then another place, and then another place, and now it's pretty much on its own. The Root is like a nomad at this point, on its own, just wandering around trying to find a spot to call its home. And yes, that rhymed, and I didn't even intend for it to do it. It just kind of happened. It just flowed that way. It is what it is. But no tears shed on my part. I'm not going to miss it. I'm sure you're not going to miss it. Like I said, it's just the fact that it just took too long to get to this point, but it is what it is. Y'all let me know what y'all think, and I'm sure it's going to be one big laugh fest, much like the clip that's going to follow this.